Wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about how to go from the standard Western American diet to a diet that is healthy for fertility, really how to get started, taking out that quote unquote diet and really looking at this as more of a lifestyle, how to set an intention, how to get started, how to help you get out of your own way. So excited for you to listen to today's episode. I'm excited to announce that registration is now open for our free fertility challenge. Our fertility challenge starts Monday, January the 24th. All you need to do is go to fertilitydietfreebie.com. That's fertilitydietfreebie, FREEBIE.com to register. And this live 5-day challenge, you'll learn which foods are right for your fertility so that you can prepare for pregnancy success, which foods could be harming your fertility so that you don't waste time consuming the wrong diet, simple steps you can implement right now so that you can optimize your preconception health and get pregnant naturally. I've worked with a chef with a nutrition background to prepare these new winter recipes that will help prepare your body for a baby. This challenge is for you and your partner. So all you need to do is go to fertilitydietfreebie.com to join. That's fertilitydietfreebie.com to join. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. There's a lot of information about which supplements are right for fertility. And like most couples I speak with, you are probably taking a lot of supplements. But are these supplements optimizing or harming your fertility? That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens so that you can prepare your body in the best way for pregnancy. And as you may know, we take a functional approach to fertility. And while supplements are included in your customized protocols, which are based on testing, they are only part of the equation because there's no pill you can take that will out-supplement the basics, such as poor diet, dysregulated sleep, either moving too much or not enough, and not dealing with chronic stress. So we do recommend basic supplements for both men and women. And these are essential starters that you need to have right now to optimize your preconception health. And I'm excited to offer you a special discount at our Fab Fertile store. You'll receive 15% discount on our professional grade supplements. So simply go to Fab Fertile store. That's F-A-B, fertilestore.com to access the basic supplements so that you can prepare your body for pregnancy success without wasting time and money on supplements that may not be right for you. Go to Fab Fertile Store, that's fabfertilestore.com, and save 15% on your order. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not one of struggle Or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Justine Altman back to the podcast, and we're digging into how to move from the standard Western or American diet to a healthy diet that is right for your fertility. So definitely check out episode number 6 for a functional medicine 101 talk, plus a look at some of the tools we use to help couples conceive. Justine is part of my team here at Fab Fertile. She's an integral part of our couples coaching program, which uses functional lab testing, lifestyle changes to dramatically improve conception. So if you're struggling with infertility, your body is desperately trying to tell you something, focusing on your health will either help you get pregnant naturally, or if you do need to go to the fertility clinic, it will improve your chances of success. Justine is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. She was diagnosed with PCOS and struggled with infertility. She had her first baby with fertility treatments, but after taking a functional approach, was able to conceive her second child naturally. Thanks so much for listening, and I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe, and if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Justine, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So today we are talking about going from the standard American or Western diet to a healthy diet that's right for your fertility. And really, we're going to talk about our background here with food. I'm going to start with mine, where I actually grew up in a super healthy household. I remember I was in grade 7. My mom gave me split pea soup and pita bread with alfalfa sprouts and sardines. And I was mortified, but as my friend sat and ate her honey sandwich and Chef Boyardee, I'm like, please give me that. But I had this healthy food, which was embarrassing. Ate fairly healthy when I was home. And then when I left home in my early 20s, I transitioned over to that standard Western or American diet. And I was like, I'm going to eat a bunch of canned soup. I want everything in cans. I couldn't wait to have Joey Louie's. And I remember making my own lunch, and I would load it up with, I don't think it was Twinkies, but I had a whole Joey Louie, those little Vachon treats. I was obsessed with desserts. So, and then so much canned soup. I can't even think of eating canned soup right now, but I had a steady diet of that stuff for years. And then my health began to take a nosedive. And then, I was forced to make these changes. For me, when I changed my diet and ended up going gluten and dairy free and then later corn free, at that point, I had chronic bladder infections, chronic yeast infections, chronic sinus infections, dandruff and seasonal allergies. And my immune system was low. I was catching every cold and flu that went by me. And when I started changing my diet, lo and behold, these things slowly started to go away. And I worked on my gut health. But I grew up in that healthy environment. And my parents, when I left the house, they decided they were going to be vegans. And now I've got my parents, my mom's 75, my dad's 80, still doing the vegan thing 35 years later. It was not my dad's idea, because my dad's idea of eating food, even to this day, his default is still beans on toast. That is his go-to. He takes a can of brown beans with bread. My mom's making some healthy plant-based foods, but it's interesting to see their health in comparison to some of their friends and stuff. But my mom was the one bringing the string bag to the grocery store. When I went with her years ago, was mortified. I'm like, what is that string bag? And now she was ahead of her time. Yeah. So what about you, Justine? I think your diet during your childhood was a little bit junky and packaged like so many people.
It sure was. But I want to commend your mom for bringing her own bags way back in the day. I remember it being a thing with the cashiers at the grocery store, even 10 years ago, looking at us like we were insane for having brought our own bags. And now that's the thing. We all do it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I grew up on junk, pure junk all day, every day. Sugary kids cereals for breakfast. I know for a number of years when I was real young, I went to a babysitter's house, and every day she asked me what I wanted for lunch. And every day I told her grilled cheese. And every day that's what I had for lunch was grilled cheese. And from a very young age, right? Coca-Cola was in my baby bottle.
Oh my goodness.
So like really not good food. So I grew up not only being fed really crummy foods, but also not knowing what good foods were and what good foods weren't. What I thought was making dinner was making a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese or going to pick up McDonald's. I really thought I was whipping up a fancy meal if I was making, spaghetti with a jar of sauce. But come to find out, like none of that stuff was any good for me. And it was basically all sugar and carbs. I didn't care for protein, right? It's not as tasty to your sweet tooth. I didn't care for proteins and I didn't care for vegetables. And no one ever made me eat anything green. So basically my whole palate was nothing but boxed and bagged junk foods.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend who literally, well, she's still my friend to this day, met her when I was 8. And she would have the Chef Boyardee and then the honey sandwiches. And then I'd go to her house and it would be like packages of cookies. And I literally always go to her house after school because I'm like, you got the best stuff. Because my house, my mom would be like, I'm like, where's the dessert? She's like, you could have an apple. I'm like, oh, I want a freaking thing of cookies. But yeah, it's interesting what we eventually, hopefully for my case, it was like turning into my mother at one point. I'm like, oh, here I am again. My husband's like, oh, you turned into her. I'm like, oh God. So how do we make these changes to go from that standard American diet or Western diet, because I'm in Canada, to a healthy diet? Where do you think the best place is to start?
It's really different for different people. And some people really do have to ease into it. That was me for sure. Someone could have told me I was going to die in a week if I didn't make this change wholeheartedly right now, and it wouldn't have mattered to me. I was that addicted to my junk foods. And for other people, I've seen the opposite work. And I've seen the opposite work for me too in later years, where if you just say, okay, this is it, this is the rule you're going to abide by when you make these changes to your diet and go all the way. We talk about the autoimmune protocol sometimes. It's a semi-restrictive diet. It's challenging to follow if you're used to a standard Western diet, but the impact is really great. And so I've certainly worked with people who really wanted to sort of baby step their way into it. And instead, after conversation, we ended up settling on, nope, we're just going to go 100% from day one. And that ended up being the most important thing that ever could have happened. And it's because if we ease into it, it's almost like the commitment level isn't quite the same. Mm-hmm. And like we have a decision to make every time we go to put food in our mouths, right? And it's like, did we have a good day? Are we in a good position to make good decisions and choose this healthy thing, this piece of kale versus this Snickers bar or whatever? When we commit to something like autoimmune protocol or paleo and we decide to do it 100%, it sort of sets this stage where in your mind, you just know that anything that doesn't meet the confines of the diet is just not an option. There's no decision involved. It's just purely not an option. And for some people, that makes it easier. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get to make is how you ease into it is really different from person to person. But ultimately, the most important thing is let's eliminate the stuff that's causing inflammation for you. So as much as possible, let's minimize the sugar, minimize alcohol, minimize the processed foods, right? So if it came in a box, chances are it's not very good for you. And try to focus on the things that are going to bring us good nutrition. So our veggies and our meats and our healthy fats and our fruits.
And as I called it healthy diet, I think it's to have a mindset shift there too of this is not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And it's not about deprivation, you drinking green juice or surviving on something that's tasteless and it's going to suck. To me, this is like the best I've ever eaten. I can't believe I was eating that other junk. And I was always kind of craving this, but I didn't know it at the time. It's to have that mindset shift of this is a lifestyle choice and you want to be healthy and have a healthy body for your future child.
When I first sort of made the switch and started eating real foods and people would ask me, well, how's the diet going? And I, not trying to be a jerk about it, would sort of come back with, well, calling it a diet doesn't really hit the nail on the head. It really is more of a lifestyle. And it's because focusing your foods on the good, healthy foods means suddenly like you're doing things differently in your household than most of the other households around you, right? And so if you look at your cart when you're buying food off of the paleo plan or the autoimmune protocol or whatever, it's going to look vastly different from most of the other people walking through the grocery store. Their cart's going to be full of boxes and yours is going to be full of fresh produce. And so it really does represent a lifestyle shift because now you're buying different foods. It looks different. How you grocery shop, place where you source your foods look different. And a lot of times when people go down this road, they start to look for, say, a local farmer where they can get their veggies and sometimes their meats. And sometimes if they're still doing dairy, they get their dairy there or their eggs or, whatever it may be. I guess diet is sort of like, it's like the gateway. If we're talking like drugs being a gateway drug, the food choices is just sort of the gateway to the healthy lifestyle in general.
Yeah, it's so true. It took me a while to find one because in the beginning I had an organic box, but it was from a co-op. You know, it was seasonal. So I'd be getting 6 watermelons in 1 week and wax of squash. And now I have it so it's customized and I get it all year long. And it's an assortment of things I can actually eat, which has been helpful. And then we get our meat delivered as well. And we can add fish in there too. So when I go to the grocery store, instead of whipping around the whole entire grocery store, I just go right to the health food section. I'll do some organic veggies if I need to top up, and then just straight to the organic section and whip around there. And it's interesting when I go outside of that section because I rarely do, unless I wanted, even like paper products now can be better bought in the health food section. So grocery shopping is faster. So it's all in one section because some of these grocery stores, like ours some here are just massive. I know in the States too, it's kind of, you spend too long. I want to get in there and get out. And now obviously you can get them delivered. Although I did try that recently to have the delivery option, but there was some boo-boos on stuff. And I was like, well, maybe I can handle it. Then it kept getting boo-boos. And I'm like, okay, well, I was like, maybe I'll just go back to picking my own. Yeah. So it is really important as you start to change things is to set your intention. Obviously, you're here right now listening to this podcast. We know you're planning to have your child. You have a really huge why. And for my why at the time, I was allergic to all sorts of antibiotics. I was peeing blood. I was taking antibiotics for sinus infection, was constantly sick, even though I wouldn't even have classified myself sick at the time. Mine was to stop taking all this stuff so I could get healthy. And although many people are coming to us, it's like I'm not a sick population. It's a population that want to have their child. There's still a very strong why as to why you're doing this. And this is, to make sure you do this with your partner. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But setting your intention really keeps you focused because let's face it, as we say, the cultural side of this as to why people are kind of start questioning you. Like, what are you doing? What are you eating? Oh, that looks horrible. Or that seems, what do you eat? Poor you. Like I've had that. And I'm like, poor you, you're eating that. In the beginning, I was on a soapbox and was really telling everybody all the stuff they had to do. And then I started a podcast. But now it's like, okay, if you like what I'm eating, if you're interested, I can share it with you. But, my whole family eats this way. This is how we eat. And people will say, that's interesting. You're all intolerant to gluten? Yeah, most people are. But anyways, it is to be just to do it for yourself. You'll create a ripple effect. I have a group of friends. There's about 8 of us I met when I was in grade 7. A bunch of them now, we'd go to a potluck. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. We'd have a potluck and I'd have to really bring my own food because the potluck, I could only eat my stuff. I could eat no one else's things. And now since the last probably 2 or 3 years, out of the 8, probably more than half are now gluten and dairy free at least. So it's interesting how things are starting to shift. And I'm 50, so my friends are 50 and their health is kind of having some issues and they've been forced to make these changes. So things are starting to just shift a little bit, but it is interesting. People are kind of, they're interested, but then they're also maybe scared for themselves that, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, my why was very similar to yours, Sarah. We wanted to have a baby and, have a family. And I struggled with infertility for a lot of years. And I was working with an acupuncturist, and we were getting no progress. And he finally said, listen, Justine, this is the end of the line. There's nothing more I can do to help you unless you get your diet in order. You have to do this. There's nothing else that's going to work if you don't fix your diet, if you don't stop eating all the junk. And so finally I was convinced, and we started to work with someone who taught us to eat real foods. And from the very beginning, the train just kept rolling from there. It just changed everything for myself and for my husband. So that was definitely my why in the beginning. My why now in teaching it to people is that I don't want anyone to have to suffer the way that I did. Not only was I infertile, but I was just in pain and so much discomfort all day, every day, and so much fatigue. Every day just felt like survival. It didn't feel like living at all. And I don't want anyone to have to go through any of that, the infertility or any of the pain and discomfort.
Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this podcast right now, stop the excuses and just start. And then also sometimes people, when we start, we do a whole bunch of binging before we get going. We're like, okay, let's go on this restrictive diet. I will now eat a whole pizza and eat a whole cake or down a whole pint of ice cream. That's not necessary, but I guess you could, but then you may regret it later. Anything you wanted to say about that?
So I certainly did it. It was ceremonial for me. The day before we decided we were going gluten-free forever for the rest of our lives. And we've never cheated since that day. I remember inviting my sisters and saying, would you like to join me for lunch at Olive Garden? And I said, but the location is non-negotiable. I am having Olive Garden for the last time. Nowhere else is acceptable. And so we did. But yeah, it's like there's always going to be a reason why today or this week or this month isn't the right time. There's always going to be a birthday. There's always going to be a holiday. There's always going to be hardship of some kind, an aging parent. There's always going to be something going on that basically is an excuse to fall back on and say, well, next month will be better. But ultimately, the best thing you could ever do is just start now, right? And if you have slip ups, that's okay, right? It's not perfection, right? We're just trying to make every upgrade that we can. Every forkful you put in your mouth either makes you healthier or makes you sicker. And we want to stack the deck in your favor so that you're getting healthier, so that your body has all the things it needs for your reproductive system to be working exactly the way that it needs to.
Yeah, when I changed to dairy and gluten-free initially, I didn't know that I would never eat gluten or dairy again. So that's interesting, right? So when I first started, I remember downing quite a significant part of a maple syrup bottle because I couldn't have white sugar. So I'm going to have maple syrup. And then as I started to feel better, and then I realized I did end up not purposely slipping, but I ended up eating a lot of foods that I didn't realize had gluten, such as fries. Who knew they dusted them with wheat flour? So did a lot of, in the beginning, kind of boo-boos, inadvertently glutening myself. That went on for years, actually, before I really was able to figure out exactly all these things that I thought were gluten-free because I just thought they were. And then I started actually reading some labels, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so keeping it simple. So this thing is about protein, fat, veggies, some small carbs. It is not about, as they say, a green juice or starvation. Look at recipes and I have meal plans and all that kind of stuff. You can go on Pinterest and Google AIP or elimination diet or gluten or dairy free. There's tons of recipes out there. But this is, as they say, a lifestyle change. Anything you wanted to say about keeping it simple?
I know when I got started, there were a lot of vegetables that I refused to eat, right? I thought they were yucky. Just start with the things you can tolerate. So if that's just like carrots, broccoli, and sweet potato, then just start there and rotate between those and just do your best. And all the fruits that you do like. So work with those, work with the meats that you do like. If you don't want to have chicken without barbecue sauce, then just find a barbecue sauce that's better, that's got less sugar in it, that's maybe more flavored with herbs and spices rather than the sugary stuff. It's about making upgrades, but not forcing yourself to eat things that you hate, just focusing on the nutrient-dense foods, the actual good, healthy foods that you do like.
Yeah, I was tortured with a lot of fruits and vegetables growing up where I would eat and my mom would be like, Sarah, why are you hiding your food under the rim of the plate? I can still see it there. Or feed it to the dog. Lima beans, Brussels sprouts, all these turnips, everything. I'm not a fan of lima beans. I've started in the last little while because I think my mom used to boil the Brussels sprouts. Now I grill them with bacon. I'm like, frig, they're so good. And turnips, I'm still not a lover of turnips, but I like most things. I guess maybe I was exposed to it when I was younger because I have a friend who wasn't exposed to a lot and she is still quite picky. And some of the foods she has, it just makes her throw up. She just gets very has some emotional response to it, I guess.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I have the same kind of response to a handful of foods myself. But also it can change, right? Your palate absolutely changes. So I was certainly never fed Brussels sprouts and actually in boiled Brussels sprouts. That sounds disgusting.
It's disgusting.
But cooked with bacon and in bacon grease in a pan or on the grill, it's fantastic.
Yes.
Like I said, I never ever had a Brussels sprout before I was 30. And now we eat them all the time. And I think they're wonderful. So your palate absolutely changes. The more you eat healthy foods, the more your palate changes.
I think I read somewhere it takes 20 times for your palate to actually like something. So if it's broccoli or whatever it is that you didn't like, go and keep trying.
Yep.
Okay, so then reading labels. This is something where I would like to go in the grocery store. I'm usually in a hurry and I like to whip things in a cart and just keep going. In the beginning, there was no whipping things in the cart. I had to read the labels sometimes, now my vision seems to be going a little bit, but anyways, I got the glasses, but I don't need to read as much anymore because now I kind of know what I need, but it is being a little bit of a label detective. If it's got more than 5 ingredients, you practically, as Michael Palin says, you probably don't want to eat it. If your great grandmother doesn't recognize it, don't eat it. And you want to eat the periphery of the grocery store. So this does take a little bit of time in the beginning as you go through it. Anything you wanted to say there?
Yeah, so it's like you mentioned your grandmother. There was a meme going around for a while, something about what did your grandma call organic? What word did they use? Food, exactly. Yeah. And so that's food we were meant to eat. I agree with you, right? Like I know for the grocery store that we shop at most often, when I walk through the door, it's the wall to my very left is where the fruits and the vegetables are. And that's basically it. Sometimes we'll pick up meat, but we get a lot of our meat from our farmer. So that's essentially it. And we have no business in the cereal aisle. We have no business in the chip aisle, right? And so we don't have to spend any time in there because we know that there's nothing for us. And so in general, reading the labels, learning how to read the labels, learning how to recognize, like, do I know what this thing is? Can I identify it? So if you read a word on a label and you can't bring a picture to your mind of what that piece of produce looks like, then it's probably not something you want to be putting in your mouth. And the ideal thing is, though, let's buy foods that don't even have labels. Let's buy apples and oranges and Brussels sprouts and peas and, all the things that don't necessarily have to have a label. But otherwise, it's watch out for the things that are in labels that can be tricky. The food producers, when they put together a label, it's factual information, but it can be really tricky, right? So a lot of things will say like natural flavorings, and that can include gluten. It can include a whole lot of things. It can also say, so for example, there was a lobby going on a couple of years back to be able to refer to high fructose corn syrup as corn sugar. They wanted to be able to change the words so that people saw corn sugar and went, oh, well, that's different than high fructose corn syrup. So it can't be bad. It has to be better than high fructose corn syrup. In reality, it's the exact same thing. They just wanted to change the words so that we're duped into buying it. So ultimately, it's like, be your own detective with the labels. And again, if you can't draw a picture to your mind of what that ingredient looks like when it's growing out of the ground, then it's probably not something we want to eat.
And gluten, it can come in many different forms. I guess looking at the celiac list for gluten, what it's called, or do you refer people to anything?
So in general, I tend to just tell people to look for items that are marked gluten-free and that don't include wheat. So in the United States anyway, the packaging has to list the top allergens. And if there's wheat in the product, it must list that. So basically just to watch out for those, and then to usually watch out for anything that says artificial flavorings, because they're not required by law to tell us what's in that. And so it's really hit or miss whether that has anything in it. But then otherwise, it's a matter of there are some hygiene products. So this isn't food related, but other sources of gluten, right? So there can be, in your mousse or in your shampoo or conditioner or in your moisturizer or in any of those other kinds of products, there can be gluten in those as well. And we absolutely absorb that into our body through our skin. But on those packaging, again, to be sneaky, they'll use the formal genus and species name of gluten, which I'm not recalling off the top of my head. But there are a few of them related to wheat and related to gluten that have gluten in them. But of course, they use those words just to be sneaky. And so if you're unsure, just look up your products. Basically, Google them or pull it up, like you said, on the celiac site or whatever your resources are.
Because now it's a sales factor if it's gluten-free. So if it's not claiming it's gluten-free, it's not. Okay. And so then keeping the healthy foods available, like keeping fruit and veggies and the meat sticks, the protein snacks, leftovers. I'm a big lover of leftovers. I love this is ridiculous, but I call it I'm going to make my medley now. My husband's like, what's with you and these medleys? I like a lunch medley where I take all the stuff that I'm usually putting in. Like today I had some leftover pork chop, and then there was like some little kale microgreens and some cherry tomatoes, and just whip that up. So I usually have some sort of medley, but it's like ditching the junk food. I am still wrestling with a small chip, organic chip habit, but because it got so bad that we're like, oh, we used to have chips on the weekends. And then it became like, why do we have chips here Monday till Sunday? Oh, wait, that's all the time. Yeah. Even though you could get down vicious, gluten-free, dairy-free, somewhat, quote unquote, healthy, not healthy, these junk foods. So you got to watch that too. And I'm by no means any kind of perfect specimen on that, but it is to see how you feel when you're having it. And we'll talk about the emotional eating side of it here, but anything you wanted to say about keeping the healthy foods available?
Yeah, so again, like this is just setting yourself up for success, right? Yeah. And so, if you are someone who's on the go often, then you need to keep something in your purse, plain and simple, because if you don't, you're going to be stopping somewhere for something that isn't ideal for you. So, keep a healthy snack in your bag. I usually tell people before they get started, so pick a date to get started. Doesn't have to be today or tomorrow. Pick a date this week. And then before that happens, let's do some pantry and some fridge cleaning out, right? Let's get rid of some of that junk that we know is not good for you. That's going to be staring you in the face, right? So if you find yourself hungry and you want a snack and you go to the pantry and all that's staring you in the face is the junk food, well, that's what you're going to reach for. So I actually advise to literally box it up and to put it in a closet or put it in the basement or donate it or give it to a friend or family member to hold on to or to have or whatever. Get it out of your sight and replace it with some good healthy snacks.
And again, we talk about this sort of the theme here. It's not about perfection, not beating yourself up. If you slip up, you start again the next day. And it's not if you slip up that you never start again. It's you start again the next day, or you start again the next meal, and you just keep going because you'll start feeling amazing. Yeah, and this is kind of with the habit piece of it. An average, it takes an average of 66 days to form a habit. Obviously, 21 days is a good start, but the University of College of London talks about 66 days. Some of the habits, like if you're drinking water, can be less, but maybe exercise can be longer. Things like this could be a little bit longer. So it is to be patient with yourself, but really make that plan and stick with it. Anything you wanted to say there about habit changes?
When you go through changing diet, the first week or two, not fun sometimes. No. And sometimes it's not just about willpower and being able to stick to it, but sometimes in those first couple of weeks, our body's going through some big changes, right? Some big biochemical changes behind the scenes. And sometimes that means in the short term, we're more tired than we were before, we're more cranky than we were before, or we're more anything than we were before, right? And so sometimes it makes us feel like we're run down, where we feel a little sick, or we feel a little whatever, we feel a little under the weather. And that makes it even harder, right? So like whatever willpower we had in the first 3 days now is just crushed by the fact that on day 4, we're feeling crummy. And so, I just want to encourage you as much as you can, stick with it, because that crummy part, it comes and goes fast. It'll be over and done with before you know it. And so if you stick with it, it really will become so much easier in every aspect, right? So not only is it part of your habit and the willpower part isn't so hard, but your taste buds have changed and you're seeing some results, and now your friends and family are commenting on how your skin is glowing, and even whether or not they knew about your diet changes and how it looks like, did you lose weight? And, so all of these things are constantly you're going to reap the rewards. It's just, you got to stick through it in that first couple of hard weeks.
Yeah. And to know that during that time, if you need to take rest breaks and get lots of sleep and drink lots of water, and if you can do an Epsom salt bath too, that can help, or Epsom foot baths, and drinking milk thistle tea and dandelion tea to help. Yeah. Cause you could be detoxing. That's why you could get more acne. You could have more digestive issues. You could have headaches, but then as you work through that, then as you say, you will start to feel better. So the emotional eating thing here, many times we're eating, it's either at a habit that we, when we finish the day, we need to watch TV and have a bowl of chips. Oopsies. So it is kind of looking at some of those things, those patterns that you do. Are you run into the food, the refrigerator for snacks? If you're lonely, bored, if you're angry, you're frustrated, look at your patterns and to have other things that are available for you. If you're feeling like you have to have something that's potentially quote unquote unhealthy, like drinking a glass of water beforehand, seeing if you want it, or before you have something that's, it's not the best, have a salad before it, or an apple before it. Will you really even want that, what it is? Because many times it's an emotional thing, or actually really cluing in. I'll try to do this too. And I'm like, Sarah, are you hungry? Are you really hungry? Or you're just like, oh, I need a treat. It's been a long day. And at that point, maybe I just need to have some connection, or like talk to someone rather than eat something. So it is interesting to see your habits. Usually you feel better after you go for a walk or do some movement. So it is to see what your body really needs there. Anything you want to say on emotional eating?
I totally agree with everything you just said. And it's about what is it do I really need, and how else can I fulfill that? Or what else can I do to reward myself? So like you said, I've had a long day and I've worked really hard and I deserve a reward. Well, that's still true. But what can the reward be that's not food, right? Can it be cuddle time with your partner? Can it be going for a walk? Can it be yoga? Can it be a phone call with your best friend? There are all sorts of ways to sort of fulfill that need for something that's good after you've put in a big effort. That doesn't have to be food.
And then also, if you are having a snack or something, then getting a small bowl to put it in, instead of running off with your gluten-free chips like I'm doing. So I always put it in a small bowl, or you can have your little snack in a bowl, or smaller plates. I actually now have into this little habit, and I always feel like I'm getting more, where I have a smaller portion and then I always go back for seconds, and I feel like I'm getting more, but it's the same. Everyone else is having a bigger portion to start with, and I always get seconds. And I don't know, that mentally kind of makes me feel happy. I don't know. Yeah, something. Or more satiated, really. The water piece, I think I've talked about this before, where I've been, I used to pee once a day, thought it was a great idea, chronically dehydrated. Now I'm sitting here with 2 large things of beverages beside me, always have some sort of drink. So making sure you're drinking more water, then that helps with obviously the detox symptoms as you're making these changes, but also keeping the body moving and hydrated. Anything you wanted to say about water?
Yeah. The other thing is, a lot of times it's really hard for people to know the difference between the signals our body gives us for being thirsty versus being hungry. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times our body will tell us, oh, my belly feels hungry. I feel hungry. I need something to eat now. And in reality, we just needed some water. And if we drink some water, then that feeling will go away and we won't have that hungry feeling again until it's actually mealtime.
And all of this is because we're preparing our body for a baby, is to do this with your partner. This is not just you doing this. Otherwise, you become this short order cook where you're cooking something for yourself. And if you're the one doing the cooking, then you're cooking something for him. I see a lot of our couples, actually, the male partners, the chef. So maybe he's doing the cooking, cooking something different for each other. So doing this together is key. You keep each other accountable. You're setting yourself up for the solid foundation of healthy eating as you prepare for your child. And so really doing this together, I think, is just a wonderful thing to do with your partner. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, there's really a strong sense of camaraderie, especially if you're starting sort of from square one, like I did with my husband. Again, the only food we knew how to make was if you punch the cellophane and press 7 minutes on the microwave. We were at 30 years old. We were starting from scratch, learning how to cook food. And so this was really a journey that we went on together. And it was really sort of like it's this thing that we're doing, right? Like we're going on an adventure almost. And so this camaraderie, but also like the misery loves company, right? And so when the days get hard and I'm sick of vegetables and damn it, I would really love a bowl of pasta, at least there's someone there that 100% exactly knows what it is you're going through and what you've been through over 5 days or 30 days or however long it's been since you guys started this journey together.
Yeah, it really gets it and understands it. Yeah, because I've been doing this with my husband now. I guess it's like 10 years. I started off I think I was like 7 months ahead of him, and then he came on board. And then obviously with our kids and stuff, we changed their diets too. So, which was not easy in the beginning, but definitely worth it. So yeah, so these changes are simple, but not easy. And really having each other as your accountability partner can be great. And I'm going to, any final thoughts you have, Justine, on going from SAD, the standard American or Western diet, to healthy for fertility?
Yeah, just do it as soon as you can. There's no other one thing that's going to have quite the same impact as changing your diet to a healthy diet.
Agree. So I am excited that we have got something to help you get started right away. Registration is now open for our free Fertility Diet Challenge. All you need to do is go to fertilitydietfreebie.com. That's fertilitydietfreebie.com. The Fertility Challenge starts on Monday, January the 24th. This is a live challenge. Go to fertilitydietfreebie.com to register. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. You may be taking supplements that, instead of optimizing your fertility, may be harming it. That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens. Simply go to FabFertile Store, that's F-A-B Fertile Store.com, to receive a 15% discount on our basic supplement recommendations for preconception health. That's FabFertileStore.com. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.